The scorching sun bled across the horizon, staining the golden sands of the Nile Valley with shades of crimson and fire. The year was 1324 BCE, and Egypt was at the height of its power, yet beneath the glittering temples, towering obelisks, and elaborate palaces, there were shadows no one dared to speak of. For centuries, historians celebrated the grandeur of pharaohs, their conquests, their monuments, their divine bloodlines, but very few ever questioned what secrets lay buried beneath the polished limestone of their tombs. This is not just a story of kings and queens. It is a story of ambition, betrayal, forbidden knowledge, and the price a civilization paid for reaching beyond the limits of its gods. In the heart of Thebes, within the sacred walls of the Temple of Karnak, a young scribe named Nekhet pressed his trembling fingers against a slab of sandstone covered in ancient inscriptions. He wasn't supposed to be there. The high priests guarded this chamber fiercely, claiming that the texts contained divine secrets granted by the gods themselves. But Nekhet had been sent by someone far more powerful than any priest, Queen Ankhesenamun, the widow of the boy king Tutankhamun. At just 18 years old, she carried the weight of a broken dynasty on her shoulders. The death of her young husband had left Egypt vulnerable, and powerful enemies circled like vultures, waiting to claim the throne. But the queen was not only fighting for power. She was searching for the truth. For whispers in the royal court spoke of a secret society buried deep within the history of Egypt, a brotherhood of priests and scholars sworn to protect forbidden knowledge about life, death, and the afterlife. The answers, it was said, were hidden in the Book of Thoth, an ancient manuscript rumored to hold secrets so dangerous that even the gods feared mortals might discover them. Nekhet's heart pounded as he carefully traced the carved hieroglyphs. The inscriptions told of an ancient king, long before the time of the pyramids, who had unlocked the secret of speaking to the dead. But the records abruptly stopped, as if someone had deliberately erased part of history. Suddenly, a cold voice echoed behind him. "You shouldn't be here, scribe." Nekhet spun around to see General Horemheb, the powerful commander of Egypt's armies, standing in the shadows. His sharp gaze cut through the darkness like a blade. "The queen's orders," Nekhet stammered, clutching the papyrus scrolls tightly. Horemheb stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The queen plays a dangerous game," he whispered. "There are things buried in these sands that should never be unearthed. If you continue down this path, you will awaken forces even the pharaohs feared." Before Nekhet could respond, Horemheb vanished into the corridors, leaving behind only the faint scent of burning incense. Later that night, Ankhesenamun stood on the palace balcony overlooking the Nile. The wind carried with it the haunting chants of priests from the nearby temples, and the distant flicker of torchlight danced upon the river's surface. She held the scrolls Nekhet had retrieved and read the fragmented lines aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. "He who holds the words of Thoth shall command both life and death, but the price of knowledge is eternal bondage." Her hands trembled. Was this the reason her husband had died so young? Was this the secret her father, the heretic pharaoh Akhenaten, had tried to uncover when he defied the old gods and built his city of Amarna? Suddenly, the sound of footsteps broke her thoughts. Nekhet approached cautiously, bowing low. "My queen, I fear we are being watched," he whispered. "Someone knows what we're searching for." Ankhesenamun's eyes narrowed. "Then we move faster," she replied. "If the priests are hiding the truth, we must reach it before they do." But neither of them knew that deep beneath the sands, within a hidden chamber far below the Valley of the Kings, ancient traps and curses still guarded secrets meant to stay buried forever. And someone else, someone far more dangerous, was already one step ahead. Far to the south, beyond the lush delta and into the desolate desert, an expedition had already begun. General Horemheb, despite his warnings to Nekhet, had sent a team of soldiers and engineers to excavate a long-forgotten tomb rumored to contain relics of the lost pharaoh Sogkhotep IV, a king whose reign had mysteriously vanished from all royal records. The tomb had been sealed for over 1,000 years, its entrance hidden beneath shifting sands and guarded by enormous stone guardians carved in the likeness of Anubis, the god of death. When the soldiers finally pried open the ancient doorway, a gust of air escaped, carrying with it a stench of decay and something else, something unnatural. Inside, The walls were covered in faded murals depicting rituals unlike any known in Egyptian religion, rituals involving blood, sacrifice, and celestial alignments. Among the artifacts, they discovered a strange tablet made of black basalt, etched with symbols no priest could translate. But when one of the soldiers touched the tablet, he collapsed instantly, his eyes wide open, his lips frozen in a silent scream. Word of the death reached Horemheb by nightfall, and instead of halting the excavation, he doubled his efforts. For he, too, was searching for the Book of Thoth. Back in Thebes, Ankhesenamun summoned Nekhet to her private chamber. "Every clue leads us to the Valley of the Kings," she said, spreading out a map on the polished alabaster table. "The tombs we know are only a fraction of what lies beneath. There are hidden passages, chambers deliberately erased from history." Nekhet hesitated. "My queen, if the legends are true, perhaps some truths are meant to remain buried." Ankhesenamun fixed him with a piercing gaze. "And yet those same truths may hold the key to saving Egypt. Do you want to live under the rule of men who worship secrets they do not understand?" Nekhet swallowed hard but nodded. The decision was made. At dawn, they would leave the palace in disguise and descend into the desert, following a trail of forgotten hieroglyphs that led to a forbidden tomb. But somewhere deep within the temple's shadows, an old high priest listened to every word, his face hidden beneath a hood of black linen. And he smiled. For he had waited his entire life for someone to open the gates of the past. The air in Thebes grew heavy as dark omens began to spread. Farmers reported strange lights hovering above the Nile at night. Temple priests claimed they heard whispers in the underground chambers. And in the city's marketplace, rumors spread like wildfire. The gods were angry, they said. Something forbidden had been disturbed. Yet Ankhesenamun pressed forward. On the second night of their secret journey, as she and Nekhet camped beneath the cold desert stars, a sound pierced the silence, the slow, rhythmic beating of drums carried on the wind. Nekhet froze. "My queen, that sound does not belong to any festival I know." Ankhesenamun glanced toward the horizon and saw faint torches moving in the distance. "They've found us," she whispered. The figures drew closer, dozens of men dressed in black robes, their faces hidden behind golden masks shaped like falcons. The Brotherhood of the Hidden Sun. The very one sworn to protect the forbidden knowledge she now sought. And as the drums grew louder, the sands beneath their feet seemed to tremble. What neither the queen nor Nekhet realized was that the tablet Horemheb's men had unearthed had already been moved, hidden within the Brotherhood's possession. And unlocking its secrets would unleash something Egypt had not seen for thousands of years. Something that could either crown Ankhesenamun as the most powerful ruler Egypt had ever known, or condemn the entire kingdom to eternal darkness. The journey into the Valley of the Kings was just beginning. The past was awakening. And the dead would not rest for long. The desert night was colder than the deepest chamber of any tomb. Queen Ankhesenamun crouched low behind a cluster of jagged rocks, the cool grit of sand biting against her palms as she watched the golden-masked figures approach. Beside her, Nekhet gripped a small copper dagger, its dull blade trembling slightly in his hand. The sound of drums echoed louder now, slow, deliberate, ancient. Each beat carried with it the weight of secrets buried for centuries. The Brotherhood of the Hidden Sun had found them. Ankhesenamun's breath caught in her throat. The Brotherhood was older than any dynasty, older even than the pyramids themselves. Legends whispered that its members had served under the forgotten pharaoh Sogkotep IV, guarding forbidden knowledge stolen from the gods. Knowledge powerful enough to change the course of history. And now they were here. Before the queen could react, one of the masked figures stepped forward. He was taller than the rest, his robes lined with intricate golden threads, and in his hand, he held a staff topped with an obsidian falcon. When he spoke, his voice was low, carrying an unsettling calm. "Ankhesenamun, daughter of the heretic pharaoh," he said. "You walk a dangerous path. Turn back, or you will awaken forces you cannot control." The queen stood, her chin raised, refusing to show fear. "The priests have hidden truths from Egypt," she said firmly. "I seek knowledge that belongs to the people, not to those who guard it in darkness." The leader tilted his head slightly, as if studying her resolve. Finally, he spoke again. "You are brave," he said. "Brave, but blind." Before she could respond, the torches of the Brotherhood suddenly dimmed, as if swallowed by an unseen shadow. A deep rumble trembled through the sand beneath their feet. And then, as swiftly as they had appeared, the masked men retreated into the darkness, disappearing into the endless dunes without a trace. Neket's voice cracked with fear. "My queen, why did they not attack us?" Ankhesenamun's eyes narrowed, scanning the horizon. "They weren't here to stop us," she said softly. "They were warning us." By dawn, they reached the western edge of the Valley of the Kings. The sandstone cliffs glowed faintly beneath the rising sun, shadows stretching long across the rocky terrain. Neket wiped the sweat from his brow as they climbed a narrow path leading toward a hidden chamber the Queen's map had revealed. The entrance was almost invisible, concealed behind a wall of jagged stone carved to blend seamlessly with the surrounding cliffs. Neket pressed his hand against the smooth surface, searching for an opening. Then, with a soft click, a section of the wall shifted, revealing a narrow passageway descending into the earth. The air was cool and heavy, carrying with it the scent of dust and something older, something untouched for millennia. As they stepped inside, their torches illuminated walls covered in vivid paintings, not of kings or gods, but of celestial charts, strange symbols, and unfamiliar constellations. Neket's voice was barely a whisper. "My queen, this isn't like any tomb I've ever seen." Ankhesenamun ran her fingers across a series of carved inscriptions. "They're not funerary texts," she murmured. "They're instructions." Deep within the chamber, they found an altar made of black basalt, polished smooth as glass. Upon it rested a small golden box sealed with wax and inscribed with symbols older than the hieroglyphs of their time. Neket hesitated. "Perhaps we should leave it untouched," he whispered. Ankhesenamun ignored him. She reached forward and broke the seal. Inside the box lay a fragment of a tablet, smooth, dark, and etched with symbols identical to the one Horemheb's men had discovered in Sogkotep's tomb. But there was something else, a strip of papyrus, brittle with age, tucked beneath the fragment. The ink had faded, yet a single line remained legible. "When the eye of Ra aligns with the serpent of the sky, the gates of Duat shall open." Neket frowned. "The Duat, the land of the dead," he whispered. Ankhesenamun traced the words with trembling fingers. "Perhaps the Book of Thoth isn't just a legend," she said softly. Far above, unseen in the cliffs, General Horemheb watched through narrowed eyes. He had followed them for days, guided by spies hidden within the Queen's own court. His soldiers stood behind him, their armor gleaming faintly in the early light. "Signal the men," he commanded. "If the Queen finds the tablet, we take it, by force if necessary." One of his captains hesitated. "But, my lord, the Brotherhood." "Let the priests hide behind their shadows," Horemheb snapped. "Egypt belongs to those strong enough to seize it." That night, as Ankhesenamun and Neket camped deep inside the hidden chamber, the Queen awoke to a strange sound, a low, rhythmic humming reverberating through the stone walls. She sat up sharply, scanning the darkness. At the far end of the chamber, the basalt altar began to glow faintly. Neket stirred, rubbing his eyes. "My queen, what is that?" Before she could answer, the fragment of the tablet pulsed with a soft blue light. And then, faintly, they heard it, whispers. Not in Egyptian, but in a language neither of them recognized. Neket clutched his dagger, his voice trembling. "Perhaps we've gone too far," he said. Ankhesenamun shook her head. "No," she said firmly. "This is what they were trying to hide from us." The whispers grew louder, echoing through the chamber until suddenly, they stopped. The glow faded. And in the silence that followed, the sound of footsteps approached. From the shadows emerged three masked figures. The Brotherhood had returned. But this time, they came without drums, without warning. The leader raised his hand. "You've opened a door that cannot be closed," he said. Ankhesenamun stood her ground. "Then tell me what lies beyond it," she demanded. The masked man hesitated, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "There are forces buried beneath this land older than Egypt itself," he said. If the gates of Duat are opened, the balance between the living and the dead will collapse. Nekhet stepped forward, his voice trembling. Then help us stop it. But the leader only shook his head. It cannot be stopped, he said softly. It has already begun. Far away, deep within Sogkotep's tomb, Horemheb's men struggled to lift a massive slab of stone. Beneath it lay a staircase spiraling down into the earth. At the bottom, they discovered a vast underground chamber lined with rows of sealed sarcophagi. One of the soldiers stepped closer, brushing away layers of dust. The carvings on the nearest sarcophagus were unlike any known Egyptian script. "Open it," Horemheb ordered. The lid slid free with a deep groan of stone on stone. Inside lay not a body, but another tablet, larger and darker than the fragment Ankhesenamun had found. The moment the soldier touched it, the torches flickered violently. A gust of icy air surged from the chamber, and faint, distant chanting filled the darkness. And then, a heartbeat. Slow. Heavy. Ancient. Something beneath the tomb had awakened. Back in the hidden chamber, Ankhesenamun gripped the tablet fragment tightly. If Horemheb gets his hands on the rest of the tablets, she whispered, he could unleash something none of us can control. Nekhet looked at her, fear etched across his face. My queen, if these legends are true, then the gods themselves may not be able to save us. Outside, the desert winds howled through the cliffs, carrying with them a strange sound, the distant echo of chanting. The Brotherhood exchanged uneasy glances. They've found the second tablet, the leader muttered. The old king's tomb has been breached. Ankhesenamun turned to him sharply. Then guide us, she demanded. If you truly wish to protect Egypt, help us find the Book of Thoth before Horemheb does. The masked man was silent for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. There is one place where the path begins, he said quietly. The Temple of Seshat, hidden beneath the sands near Abydos. But beware, once we enter, there is no turning back. The queen's resolve hardened. Then we leave at dawn, she said. But as the torches dimmed, none of them noticed the faint cracks forming on the surface of the basalt altar. From within, something stirred. And the whispers began again. The night winds carried whispers through the Valley of the Kings. Queen Ankhesenamun stood at the edge of the hidden chamber, her torch flickering weakly against the shifting desert shadows. Behind her, Nekhet adjusted the straps of his satchel, clutching the fragile tablet fragment as though his life depended on it. The Brotherhood leader, his falcon mask gleaming faintly in the torchlight, watched them silently. His name, he finally revealed, was Aset-Ra, High Keeper of the Hidden Sun. The path to the Temple of Seshat begins north, Aset-Ra said, his voice deep and deliberate. But you must understand, the temple does not welcome the living. Many who entered were never seen again. Ankhesenamun held his gaze. Then we'll be the first to leave, she said firmly. Aset-Ra studied her for a moment, then nodded. There's no turning back once we step onto that path. By dawn, they began their journey. The desert stretched endlessly before them, dunes rising and falling like waves frozen in time. The heat was relentless, each breath tasting of dust and salt. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the distant cry of vultures circling overhead. Nekhet walked close beside the queen, his voice low. My queen, do you trust them? He asked, glancing at Aset-Ra and his masked followers. Ankhesenamun hesitated. I don't trust anyone, she admitted softly. But right now, they know more than we do. Ahead, Aset-Ra raised his hand, signaling for silence. In the distance, partially buried beneath the golden sands, rose a massive stone archway. Its surface was carved with intricate celestial markings, stars, moons, and constellations unfamiliar even to the queen. Nekhet's breath caught. By the gods, is that it? Aset-Ra nodded. The Temple of Seshat, he said solemnly. Built in the age before kings, when knowledge itself was worshipped. The entrance was sealed. A single monolithic door of black granite blocked their path, etched with symbols older than hieroglyphs. Aset-Ra stepped forward, raising his obsidian staff. He placed its tip into a small indentation on the door, whispering words in a forgotten tongue. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the massive stone shifted, grinding against itself until a dark passageway yawned open, exhaling cold, stale air. They descended into the darkness, their torches lighting narrow corridors lined with murals depicting scenes of scholars studying the stars, measuring the earth, and building devices unlike anything known in Egypt. Neket stopped before one of the murals, tracing the carved lines with trembling fingers. "My queen," he whispered, "look at this. These are not depictions of rituals, they're instructions. These symbols speak of star alignments, calculations, measurements." Ankhesenamun's brow furrowed. "These are not the works of priests," she murmured. "This is something else entirely." The deeper they went, the colder the air became. Finally, they reached a vast circular chamber supported by towering columns shaped like papyrus reeds. In the center stood a raised stone platform, and upon it rested an object wrapped in layers of linen and bound by golden clasps. Asetre approached cautiously, lowering his head. "The Codex of Seshat," he whispered reverently. "Said to contain the secrets of the heavens and the underworld." Ankhesenamun stepped forward. "Open it," she commanded. Asetre hesitated. "If we open it here, we may not survive," he warned. "The temple was built to protect this knowledge, and to punish those who seek it." But before they could decide, the ground trembled violently. From the shadows of the upper chamber, faint footsteps echoed. Ankhesenamun turned sharply, her hand on the hilt of her dagger. Emerging from the darkness came General Horemheb, flanked by his soldiers, their bronze blades glinting in the torchlight. "I knew you'd come here," Horemheb said coldly, his voice carrying easily in the hollow chamber. "Hand over the fragment, Ankhesenamun, and I'll spare your life." Neket stepped in front of her, clutching the satchel tightly. "You'll have to kill us first," he spat. Horemheb's lips curved into a cold smile. "That can be arranged." Before swords could clash, a deep rumble tore through the chamber. The golden clasps binding the Codex of Seshat snapped violently, sending sparks of blue light across the stone platform. A sudden burst of cold wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing half the torches. Asetre shouted above the chaos. "Do not touch the Codex." But it was too late. One of Horemheb's men lunged forward, grabbing the linen-wrapped object. The moment his fingers made contact, a high-pitched ringing filled the chamber. The soldier collapsed instantly, his body rigid, his eyes wide and unblinking. The others froze in horror. And then, slowly, the columns of the temple began to vibrate. Symbols carved into the walls lit up one by one, glowing faintly as though awakening from a long slumber. Neket backed away, pulling the queen with him. "My queen, we need to leave now." But Asetre held his ground, his voice steady despite the chaos. "This temple was built as a seal," he said, his tone grave. "The Codex is not just a record of knowledge, it is a key." Ankhesenamun's chest tightened. "A key to what?" Asetre turned slowly, his mask reflecting the torchlight. "To the gates of Duat." The queen's breath caught in her throat. "The land of the dead," she whispered. Before she could ask more, the sound of cracking stone echoed from beneath their feet. A section of the chamber floor collapsed, revealing a spiraling staircase plunging into complete darkness. From below, a cold gust rose, carrying with it distant chanting in a language none of them understood. Horemheb stared into the abyss, his knuckles white on the hilt of his sword. "What's down there?" he demanded. Asetre's voice was barely above a whisper. "Something Egypt buried long before kings ruled the Nile." Despite his warning, Horemheb descended first, his soldiers following behind. Ankhesenamun hesitated only a moment before signaling Neket to follow. Asetre led the way, torch in hand, his shadow stretching long across the ancient stone steps. The staircase seemed endless, winding deeper and deeper until the air grew damp and heavy. Finally, they emerged into a colossal underground hall. Before them stood an enormous door of black granite, carved with thousands of unfamiliar symbols that shimmered faintly under the torchlight. In its center was an engraving of a single eye, the Eye of Ra, surrounded by serpents. Nekhet stepped forward, his voice trembling. "My queen," the inscription above the door, it matches the papyrus from the tablet fragment. Ankhesenamun's heart pounded. "When the Eye of Ra aligns with the serpent of the sky," she whispered, "the gates of Duat shall open." Asetara's gaze darkened. "This is what we feared." The Brotherhood was sworn to ensure this door remained sealed forever. Horemheb approached the door, running his fingers across the engraved serpents. "You mean to tell me behind this lies power beyond the gods?" he asked. Asetara stepped between him and the door. "Behind this lies death," he said coldly. "Open it, and Egypt will suffer a fate no kingdom can escape." Horemheb's jaw tightened. "Then step aside." Before anyone could stop him, he thrust his torch into a small depression near the base of the door. The ground shuddered violently. The symbols lit up, glowing brighter and brighter until the entire chamber was bathed in blinding light. A deafening roar filled the hall, as if the very earth beneath them had awakened. And slowly, impossibly, the massive granite door began to open. A gust of icy air blasted into the chamber, extinguishing every torch. For a moment, there was only darkness. Then, a faint, haunting sound. A whisper. One voice at first. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Nekhet clutched the queen's arm, his voice breaking. "My queen, they sound like prayers." Ankhesenamun's lips trembled. "No," she whispered. "They sound like warnings." The door creaked wider. And beyond it, in the shadows of the Duat, something moved. The granite door of the Duat stood wide open. The cold air spilling from the depths was unlike anything they had ever felt, sharp, unnatural, heavy with the weight of forgotten centuries. Nekhet gripped Ankhesenamun's arm tightly, his breath shallow, his eyes wide as the whispers beyond the threshold grew louder, rising into a chorus that seemed to come from both nowhere and everywhere. General Horemheb, torch still in hand, stepped forward, his shadow stretching impossibly long across the stone floor. "Inside this door lies the power of the gods themselves," he said, his voice steady but trembling beneath the surface. Asetara, the leader of the Brotherhood, blocked his path. "Power," he hissed. "You fool. These are not gifts from the gods. These are chains forged for humanity's protection. Close the gate now, before it's too late." But Horemheb ignored him. The general's ambitions had consumed him, the lure of eternal power was stronger than any warning. He stepped across the threshold. The moment his sandal touched the polished black stone of the Duat, the chamber erupted with a deafening roar. Blue light shot up from the engraved serpents on the door, racing across the ceiling like veins of lightning. Nekhet screamed as the temperature plummeted, their torches extinguished instantly. In the darkness, the voices grew louder, overlapping into an overwhelming cacophony. Then, silence. And from deep within the passageway, a faint glow appeared. Horemheb's silhouette re-emerged, but something about him was wrong. His movements were stiff, his breath uneven, his torchlight flickering violently as though struggling to exist in his presence. He stepped back into the chamber, his eyes reflecting a pale, unnatural light. When he spoke, his voice no longer carried the confidence of a general, it carried something far older. "You should not have come here," the voice said, deep and resonant, layered as if 1,000 voices spoke through him. Ankhesenamun tightened her grip on her dagger, forcing her fear into silence. "What are you?" she demanded. Horemheb smiled faintly, though his eyes remained cold and distant. "I am what remains," he said softly. "What Egypt tried to bury." Asetara raised his obsidian staff, the falcon head glowing faintly. "Step away from the door," he commanded. But before he could act, Horemheb lifted his hand, and an unseen force slammed into Asetara, sending him crashing against one of the stone pillars. The queen's heart pounded in her chest. The realization came swiftly, opening the door hadn't just disturbed something ancient, it had freed it. And now it walked among them. The walls began to shake violently, sand raining down from the ceiling as the chamber groaned beneath the weight of its own secrets. Nekhet pulled the queen back toward the staircase. "We must go," he cried. But Ankhesenamun stood frozen, her gaze locked on Horemheb. The whispers in the air had shifted now, they weren't warning them anymore. They were calling her. She turned slowly toward the tablet fragment in Neket's satchel, her breath shallow. "The Book of Thoth," she whispered. "It's not just knowledge, it's the key to sealing the gate." Aset-Ra, clutching his side, struggled to stand. "The Codex," he rasped. "You must reunite the fragment with the Codex on the altar. Only then will the gate close." Ankhesenamun nodded once, her resolve hardening. "Neket," she said firmly, "give it to me." The young scribe hesitated only a moment before pulling the fragment free. She ran toward the spiral staircase, climbing back toward the upper chamber as the ground quaked beneath her feet. Behind her, Horemheb, or the thing inside him, roared, the sound reverberating like thunder through the stone halls. In the upper chamber, the Codex of Seshat still rested upon the basalt altar, glowing faintly. Ankhesenamun slammed the fragment onto its surface, aligning it with the broken edges. The moment they touched, a blinding flash of blue-white light erupted, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. The Codex began to hum, a low, resonant vibration that pulsed through the walls of the temple. Suddenly, the whispers ceased. And for the first time since entering the temple, there was silence. Then, the voice came. Not from Horemheb. Not from Aset-Ra. Not from anyone in the room. It came from the Codex itself. "You awaken what was meant to sleep," the voice intoned, deep and endless, like the sound of time itself. Ankhesenamun fell to her knees, her palms pressed against the cold stone. "I seek only to protect Egypt," she whispered. The light from the Codex flickered, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Then you must choose," the voice said. "Close the gate and bury the knowledge forever, or leave it open and pay the price." Neket looked at her, his expression pleading. "My queen, we must seal it," he urged. But Ankhesenamun hesitated. If she sealed the gate, the knowledge of the gods would be lost forever. The power her father, Akhenaten, had once sought, the secrets of the heavens, the keys to immortality, would vanish into the sands for eternity. Her breath came fast, her heart pounding. Finally, she whispered. "Seal it." The Codex pulsed one final time. The ground beneath them shook violently as the energy within the tablet surged upward, sending a blinding wave of light racing down the spiral staircase and into the depths of the Duat. Below, Horemheb let out a scream, not of pain, but of fury, as the presence within him fought against the closing gate. The massive granite doors groaned, their symbols dimming one by one as they sealed shut with a thunderous crash. The whispers stopped. The air grew still. And the ancient power, awakened for the briefest moment, was locked away once more. When silence returned, Ankhesenamun collapsed to her knees, her chest heaving as she clutched the edge of the altar. Neket knelt beside her, his face pale and streaked with dust. Aset-Ra approached slowly, lowering his hood at last. His face was weathered, his eyes heavy with centuries of burden. "It is done," he said quietly. Ankhesenamun looked up at him, exhaustion in her gaze. "Not done," she whispered. "Only delayed." Aset-Ra nodded solemnly. "The Codex must remain hidden," he said. "Its pieces scattered, its knowledge forgotten. If men find it again, Egypt will not survive a second time." She closed her eyes, tears stinging the corners. "I understand." They left the Temple of Seshat at dawn. The desert winds howled softly as the first rays of sunlight touched the golden sands. Behind them, the massive stone archway sealed itself, swallowing the temple beneath a curtain of shifting dunes. Ankhesenamun turned for one final glance. The weight of history pressed against her chest. Neket walked beside her, silent, his mind replaying the voices he'd heard, the glow of the Codex, the promise of power now forever lost. As they disappeared into the horizon, Aset-Ra and the remaining Brotherhood members lingered a moment longer. He looked up at the blazing sun and whispered a prayer in a language no living soul remembered. The knowledge was safe, for now. But deep beneath the sands, beyond the sealed granite doors, something ancient still stirred. And it waited.